morning, Drive Time. Welcome back. We have just a fantastic opportunity here. We have Coach Tom Ryan. He is the head wrestling coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. I had a very cool opportunity a few years ago to not only hear Coach Ryan give his testimony, but I also got to watch him coach my oldest son wrestling, which I still think is pretty stinking cool, regardless of whether you're a Buckeyes fan or not. But Coach Ryan has recently released a book called Chosen Suffering, and he's just going to honor us with his presence over a few weeks. We're going to do a series based on his book, and it's the idea of chosen suffering versus unchosen suffering and how that impacts our life. So Coach Ryan, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending time with us. And if you would just start to frame up this idea of what chosen suffering is.
Thanks, Dave, and great to be with all you guys on Drive Time. I'm up here in sunny Columbus, Ohio. I've got a father down in Naples, Florida. We've recruited this state quite a bit. We currently have Elijah Cleary on our team. And Chase Singletary, but back in my Hofstra days, I had a kid named Ralph Everett, and Florida is a really solid wrestling state. You'd think maybe not so, because, I mean, what are you doing in a wrestling room with the beautiful weather down there? But there's a lot of tough, God makes tough people everywhere, and we'll go anywhere to find them, the right men. So it's great to be with you guys. I'm gonna just share, as Dave mentioned, just a little bit about, this is a perspective of mine that's not something that I would have defined when I was in the moment, but now that I have the gift of time to reflect and look back, I'll share about chosen and unchosen suffering, and that's basically the two different sufferings that man can experience. A chosen suffering, and they intertwine, right? There are moments in our life where we're experiencing both chosen and unchosen in the same moment. They're railroad tracks running side by side. So chosen suffering is just choosing the hard way, right? I have yet to come across a student athlete, a leader, a successful man that has not been through some tough things that he bestowed upon himself. He chose them. He longed for them. He wanted them. The chosen suffering I'm referring to are the good things that we choose. Now, I also know a lot of men who have chosen bad things, and that chosen suffering has led them to a place of being refined. So chosen suffering is good for us when we choose things that are tough and hard on us. It also can be good for us when we choose things that are bad, if they ultimately lead us to a place of a better us. So chosen suffering, I'll share the story of an emotional time for me. It was 2015. It was March of 2015. And I was in the story is actually in the book, but I was at the underbody of the arena. We were in St. Louis. For those of you that don't follow the sport of wrestling, there's roughly 125,000 people come to the National Wrestling Championships over a 3-day period. This was the third day. It was the morning session, so Saturday morning. We start Thursday, we go to Saturday. And I was underneath the floor of the arena when I got a text from my wife, Lynette, stating that Billy Baldwin, who was an announcer on ESPN, had just announced that Ohio State had just won their first ever NCAA wrestling championship. So I get this text from my wife, and then moments later, she texts me, Billy Baldwin texted how proud his son Teague must be. So in that instant, you don't know much about Teague because I haven't shared that with you, but I can tell you that the absolute joy of leading a team to a national championship. My phone was, as you can imagine, was buzzing by the second. There were alumni, donors, administrators, friends, family texting me, congratulating me on this national championship. So there was a sense of, obviously a sense of pride and enjoyment and I would call when I get these texts, I refer to this as chosen suffering. When I get these messages, I'm referring to, right, the hours of work that the combined hours of work that these men chose to put themselves, to pick up a burden, to pick up a challenging burden to become the best wrestlers they could be, right? I had been coaching at this time for over 20 years and had never won a championship. So I'm reflecting on my life and the amount of work that went into being the best in the country at something that you do. I've reflected on the hours of discomfort that were chosen, and in some cases years that were chosen. And we know this. It's a non-negotiable that to attain anything that we want, there has to be discomfort, right? So in this moment, I'm dealing with this joy, right? This happiness. I wouldn't call it joy, but I would certainly call it happiness of wow. So many have chosen the hard way, and together our effort has brought Ohio State a first ever national championship. In the same instant, this text comes through about how proud Teague must be of this accomplishment. Teague is my 5-year-old son, or was my 5-year-old son, who we lost in 2004 to a massive heart attack at the dinner table. Teague represents the reality of this life, and that's that unchosen suffering could be moments away. Maybe you have in the past experienced unchosen suffering, maybe not. But I would have never referred to a heartache or something tragic as unchosen suffering, but I do now. And these are the things that happen to us that we want no part of. I would have gladly taken his place. We were at dinner. It was President's Day, February 16, 2004. It was a family dinner. I have 4 children. And he was chosen to shower first. He got up from the table. He started running around. He fell. My wife picked him up. I noticed something was wrong. She started screaming. He's not breathing. I put him on the coffee table, and for 14 minutes, I tried to keep him alive. Unchosen. Here's the thing between chosen and unchosen in my story, the things that I've learned, that chosen suffering took me to a place to pursue the truth of how I can become a better wrestler, become a better coach. And truth is the foundation. Truth and trust are the foundations for growth. The growth I've had as a competitor, as a coach, the slope has been far deeper when I trust those around me, and I trust in the process. As a college wrestler, I left a full scholarship at Syracuse and moved out to the University of Iowa. The gains I made in those 90 days, those first 90 days at Iowa was incredible because I had full trust in Coach Gable. Everything he said, I hung on. And truth is so critically important for us. And in the midst of unchosen suffering and even chosen suffering, sometimes we pursue our own truth, what we think is the way it should be. And it wasn't until this dark time of unchosen suffering where I quieted the world and pursued something far greater than how do I become a better wrestler. You see, chosen suffering, lost in the state finals, lost in the national finals, my team losing. All these things made me pursue truth and how can I maybe better train guys? How do I reassess my program? What are some things that I can do to become a better coach? But none of them brought me to my knees. And I heard a speaker once say that the modern man has a hard time finding God because they don't look low enough, right? And the bottom line for me was losing and wrestling never took me to a low enough place to consider things that were far beyond what I was considering. And trust me, guys, right? We make a lot of decisions in a day. I put a lot of time into right, what house I was going to buy. I put a lot of time into what car I was going to drive. I put a lot of time into what recruit I'm going to get. I put a lot of time into what sneakers I'm going to wear. I put a lot of time into what bed I'm going to sleep in because it matters. Rest matters. I put all this time into these things. And I had really never deeply pursued how I got here. Why am I here? And what brought me to this place of deep reflection and truth searching, not God searching. This is my story was not one about searching for God. My story was one about searching for truth. And I found God in the midst of that. So we come home from the hospital. We rushed Teague to the hospital. The ambulance finally got to the house. They rushed him to the hospital. We come home from the hospital, and I have 4 children. I have Jordan is 11, Jake was 8, Mackenzie was 3, and Teague was 5. We pull in the driveway. My kids come running out the door. And of course, they ask me a common sense question. And I say this often, and I say with absolute belief that one of our greatest gifts is common sense. And emotion will steal that from us. Emotional control is a trait of the most elite people I've been around. But for whatever reason, at times, emotion gets the best of us, and we do not think clearly, and we do not pursue truth in a way that we should. So my kids come running down the stairs. We pull in the driveway. I open the door. My wife and I are obviously in despair. And my son, Jake, said, "Where is he? Where's Teague?" What's crazy is that I could answer so many things. I could answer so many other questions he asked me because I put so much time and energy into them, but I could not answer that simple question. This unchosen suffering that occurred that night, I couldn't answer where he was. And it set me on a journey. So we huddled together for a while and cried a lot. And 2 things happened. The main thing that happened was that my time began to be focused on where's Teague. The goal of wanting to win a national championship, although it stayed strong, and become a great coach and father, it became less valued than where's Teague. So there's a term, a simple term, priceless, right? What is your priceless, right? And the definition, Webster's definition of priceless is so precious, its value cannot be determined. If someone asked me right before 6:30 p.m. on February 16, 2004, what my priceless was, listen, I would say my family, my program, but I would never have said the pursuit of God or the pursuit of truth. Now, that's not something that I could ever imagine myself saying. The deep pursuit of truth. And it wasn't until when I was on my knees, curled up in a ball, begging for mercy, that I considered pursuing truth. And I pursued it with my heart and soul. Every ounce of me. I looked into evolution. I looked into God. And it was this unchosen suffering that brought me to this place. So I'm under the bleachers. We had just won a national championship. I'm reading my text. And it overwhelmed me. The grief and happiness side by side. And I'm sure that some of you have experienced this. Train track A, things are going amazing. Train track B, things are going horrible. And as a human being, we have to manage them. And how do we do it? What is the foundational piece to managing this? And for me, it became very clear through the search of just truth that God is real. So I'm under the bleacher and I get these texts. It overwhelmed me with grief, and I had to leave the space I was in, and I found a dark place behind these curtains. They curtained everything off down below underneath the arena, and I just broke down. I broke down crying. I would have never thought, right, in the midst of one of the great moments of my life and the life of so many, that I could experience such grief. That was 2015. We get in the car, we get in the bus. After the championship, I drive home. I get to my house, I take the championship trophy, I put it on my counter. I had 2 dogs waiting for me at the house. My family was coming back from the championship. I got there before them. I take the trophy, it's on the counter. I go to let the dogs out, they wouldn't go outside. There was a lot of snow on the ground when I left, and when I got back, the snow had melted. And so it was a long winter of dogs going in the backyard, and a lot of their waste was in the yard. They didn't want to go out. So I went back in. I was in a suit. I went back in and changed my shoes. And for about an hour and a half, I cleaned up dog crap the morning after the national championships. Right? And here's the thing that you learn in those moments. And it's that the things of this world, right? The night before, we're hoisting a trophy in front of 125,000 people. It's on ESPN. We've got this trophy. My team's together. We're celebrating a championship. Within 12 hours of that moment, I was in my backyard scooping. I want that image to hold in your minds, right? Because as good as this life gets, and it's going to be fantastic in moments, this is not all there is, right? The pursuit of truth led me to the most amazing God that has carried me. I can't explain how I got through it other than God. There's no explanation. I mean, I could go into story after story of non-coincidences that have moved me in a way that has revealed the loving God that I know. And I know that a lot of us struggle with why bad things happen to good people. Why do bad things happen to bad people and people that struggle? But there is no question in my mind that the way I processed this truth allowed me to very comfortably make a decision that God is real. So over the coming weeks, I'll share some different little stories, but really lessons that I use in coaching that help my team and help the individuals, allow me to move forward and grow.
So, I mean, that is an awful lot to take in all at once. And this idea of, you brought it up a couple of times, you know, the parallel train tracks, you know, things are going great and things are going poorly. And I know at times in my life, that's been a struggle from the standpoint of allowing one to erode the other. That it's hard to find amazing joy or even a sense of accomplishment in the things that are going so well, while simultaneously you have this thing that just lives in the back of your head that things are not going so well over here. But it's, you know, you're talking about these conscious choices that you make to choose suffering that bring you the good, and even the chosen suffering to embrace the more painful things. So my question is, what would your advice be to a guy who's living in that space right now? How do you encourage them to you know, choose a track, or how to deal with the oppositional emotion
Sure.
of those tracks?
Yeah, so I would say that, I mean, that's a great question and a great point. I mean, I'm suffering right now simply because my daughter just left for Portland, right? So I know there's God. She's pursuing God. She's going to church out there that she's been following the pastor, and you know, I'm bummed about it. I'm excited for her, right? But you know, this weekend was a tough weekend. You know, seeing your young daughter move away. It's the first one in my family, and it brought back all these emotions of loss. I didn't lose her. I'm going to go see her in a couple of days. But this loss, these things that have bound us, they constantly drip into our life, even though they may have happened a long time ago. Right? The fatigue loss for me is something that is a challenge. So most importantly, I would say knowing our I believes, right? Like stapling them in, like nailing them, gluing them to our soul, our I believes. And to write out your I believes. These are the things I believe, right? So we as a team, you know, we have our guys write out, you know, our I believes, because we know this. There's no question that we are going to encounter tough things, right? They're coming. It's just when. And I think the thing that helped me probably the most as a competitor was preloading my mind that leaving a full scholarship at Syracuse and walking on at Iowa, which was the best team in the country at the time, was going to take an immense amount of discomfort. But knowing that it's going to be hard is the first step in it becoming easier. Expecting it to be easy and it becoming hard is a formula for a disaster. It's going to be brutally challenging, and I'm ready for that. So knowing our beliefs is really important. Establishing disciplines that, discipline, right? Every elite wrestler I've ever coached, they are incredibly disciplined. Their life exudes discipline. Discipline is ultimately, right, and it's a definition for it would basically be it's almost a self-imposed, right? I heard it's like a self-imposed slavery per se to the things that we value. It's self-imposed. That's what discipline is. So establishing disciplines in our lives that keep us grounded in moving forward. So knowing it's going to be hard, knowing your I believes, listening to things that are uplifting and powerful, right? Our mind is so incredibly moldable. And if we listen to things, we allow things in our brain. When I walk every morning. I have a discipline. I walk every morning and I listen to different speakers that build me up, that talk about these things, that listen, you're going to pick up burdens along the way. I pick, and a burden it's odd to say a child is a burden, but a child, it takes your love, your attention, it takes your finances, it takes your time to raise a child in society. It's a wonderful burden. Burden, I think, is a negative connotation, but it's beautiful too. And these responsibilities that we pick up as men, we don't get to drop them. Oh, because it's hard, right? That's a losing mindset. You don't just get to put things down that you chose to pick up and sometimes didn't choose to pick up, right? That's not our calling. So I think the biggest thing is to really put things in action that control our minds in a truthful way.
Well, that's good. So as you and I spoke earlier, we talked about, the kind of the goal of Drivetime is given that tangible takeaway from, powerful stories like yours, things that we as a community of guys can do this week to take a step towards improving really all the areas of our life. And after hearing you say that, I guess this will be a little different because usually I let our guests say, "Hey, do this week." But to hear the passion in your voice, it is that knowing what you believe, that what is that thing you believe. And I think for guys who are struggling with those what feel like opposing train tracks, maybe if we take the time to sit down and figure out what it is we believe in the middle of these two train tracks, it may actually help us realize that they're both heading in the same direction. They're both heading to truth, if we can focus on what we believe.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. When I hear you say that, sure, it brings me to the place of, I don't deeply believe in anything that I don't know the absolute truth about. Right? So it's like, for me, my wrestling got better when I went underneath Dan Gable. And the reason why it got better was because my trust was so strong, right, in him, because he had won 26 straight Big Ten titles. He had coached many Olympic champions. He had coached, hundreds of national champions. So my faith, my belief was so strongly, I believed in him. And when I believed in him, my progress jumped dramatically. You know, I was raised Catholic, and I think I believed in God, right? I didn't have a relationship with God, but I believed, but it wasn't until I could say beyond a shadow of a doubt the things that I have learned about Jesus. I never studied Jesus. How can you know something you've never studied? I mean, the reality is most people should have an opinion on the topic. People should have an opinion on any topic they don't know much about. But that's the world we live in, right? Social media gives us the opportunity to just say what we want, despite the fact we have no foundational facts behind what we're saying. So it would be a really nice world if Twitter or Instagram could quiet those that are texting something or tweeting something that they know nothing about. But that's not the world we live in. And unfortunately, the common person is consuming a bunch of nonsense by people that have never dug deeply into anything that they're speaking of. So, you know, it's when, to your point, you know, when you when you know what you believe because you have poured your life into it, you're much more of an authority on the topic. And so I think that's a great goal for the week, is to really, really know what you believe. Know your why you believe it. My whys. What do I believe? And am I willing to bet my life on that?
That's awesome. Knowing a little bit about where you're going in the next couple of weeks, I don't want you to have to like dive into any of those today. So again, guys, I want to encourage you to continue following us over the next couple of weeks. Coach Ryan's going to set aside time for us to continue pouring into this. His whole story and everything he's talking about is included in his book, Chosen Suffering. It's out now. Coach, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story and just a glimpse into your testimony with us. And I am really excited for what these next few weeks are going to bring us.
Yeah, great to be with you, Dave. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll see you back next week, Monday morning as always. Have a great week, and don't forget to sit down and focus on what you believe.